Hey groupies, welcome back to Form of Therapy here on the Culture Study. Today we are checking out THANXX by ATEEZ. A lot of you have requested that we check this out. This is not the title track, but rather a B-side off of ATEEZ's most recent Fever album. Now, this was up for consideration to be a title track. It was a fan voting between THANXX and Inception, and Inception was voted to be the title track. But still, they put out a music video for THANXX. Now, they did this previously with Wave and Illusion, and I believe Wave actually won the vote. There were music videos for both Wave and Illusion. Now, we're going to check this music video out. I haven't heard the song either. We are going to be doing a listening party for the album, but I wanted to get the music video out of the way, so I've been waiting for the music video to come out first. So yeah, we're going to check this out. Now, before we do, this video is brought to you by our sponsor today, Sriracha. Sriracha, put it on everything. No, this video is actually not brought to you by Sriracha, but, you know, Sriracha, holler at me. I use you for everything, and I couldn't think of a better spokesperson for Sriracha. But no, this video is actually brought to you today by our Patreon. Guys, until the day that, you know, companies like Sriracha actually sponsors me, we actually rely on our Patreon to keep this channel alive and to keep everything going. If you go to Patreon at patreon.com/formatherapy, for as little as $2 a month, you get early access to videos like this and more. We have listening parties, J-pop reactions. Though J-pop reactions are exclusive on our Patreon, and listening parties like for the ATEEZ album is going to be going on our Patreon first, and then afterwards we also have live stage variety show drama reactions for our higher level tiers. So consider joining us at patreon.com/formatherapy, and remember, buy Sriracha. All right, let's check out this video. This is THANXX by ATEEZ, and this is your Form of Therapy. All right, let's get it. Oh, this is not the beginning. Okay, here we go. Whoa, it's just starting at 11.
하나 둘하면 종종 지나친 관심은 독인이 잔을 버리고 봤어 선봉의 우두머리 베기면 베겨졌지 준비를 하시고 잡아내 꼬리에 꼬리를 받아가 자기 들어 뺏기 들어 너는 왜 말 안 들어 나 때는 나 때가 뭐 애구머냐 그 동기가 쇼 내 말이 다 맞다고 해봤어 나 안다고 Yes sir yes sir yes sir Gracias 걱정은 너 thanks I'm okay 난 그저 나일 뿐인걸 날 위해서 다 하지마 내버려도 난 내 믿을래 춤을 춰 춤을 춰 춤을 춰 움직여 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 춤을 춰 춤을 춰 춤을 춰 내 시간은 내가 원하는 대로
Wow. This is an epic scale music video. How was that 3 minutes? That felt really short. Oh. Oh, so they still kept this. That's a pirate ship. That's a pirate ship floating in the background. Oh, and so it's like a turtle, dolphin, sharks, whatever, in military camo. Okay, interesting. So couple of things that we're going to talk about here. We're going to talk about the song, the music video, and some of the cultural appropriation aspects of the video. I make my stance pretty clear on this kind of stuff, but I don't really address it because, one, usually I'm not educated enough, and I'm not, like, it's not my culture that's being appropriated, so I feel like there are plenty of other people who have the appropriate platform that can speak on it, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but there are things that I think we can actually talk about here that I think I can weigh in on, that doesn't necessarily fringe upon other people's cultures or their opinions. So first of all, let's talk about the song. Thanks is what is that guitar? What is the guitar? What is this sound right here? This. That guitar, that guitar strumming, I feel like it feels I don't know. It feels somewhere a little bit foreign to me. I don't want to say Latin. It doesn't necessarily feel Latin, and the music video seems to be all over the place because I feel like there are certain Latin influences, but like maybe it's more Moroccan. I'm not quite sure. I'm sure somebody who is actually from that country can probably give a better example. But this song itself, it has a very festive, celebratory aspect, and it does feel inspired by a different culture. This is definitely not a Korean style of a celebratory song. The song is very hype, and the rhythm is actually so fast in this song. You know, the song starts at really high level. It starts at an 11. And it only keeps building from there. It's not a slow song, and it doesn't even like build its way slowly to a hype drop chorus. It almost feels like the song starts and it never really breathes and it never really stops and it just keeps going. It's a very fun, exciting song. It's very interesting release for a summertime because naturally you're going to start to associate it as a summer song, even though this doesn't necessarily have the tropes of a summer song. I feel like it's more interesting that way, and I could see this being utilized and marketed more as a summer song. Obviously, we're going to draw natural comparisons to Inception. Is this better than Inception? Do I like this more than Inception? So here are a lot of the comments I actually got. Well, not a lot. A handful of comments I got on the Inception reaction that I put out, and people wanting me to check out Thanks. They were saying, Thanks sounds more like a title track. Thanks sounds more like an ATEEZ song. Thanks sounds better than Inception, etc., etc. So I want to address a couple of those comments that I saw. Thanks sounds like a title track song. So that's a little bit debatable. I am actually, first of all, I think I am glad that Inception was the title track, and there are several key points I want to touch upon. But first of all, Thanks is a title track. Yes and no. I think Inception and Thanks are both title track worthy, absolutely. But I think Inception is a better K-pop title track than Thanks is. Now, for the people that think Thanks is more of a title track than Inception, I understand that perspective because you're coming from a Western cultural K-pop audience. But from a K-pop marketing perspective, I think Inception is way more marketable to Koreans than Thanks is. And part of that is one, like I said, thanks. Not only is it not a Korean style, like I said, it feels inspired by a foreign genre. Again, I can't quite place which country it feels inspired by, but it does feel foreign. That alone is going to already kind of feel a little different and sort of on the fringe. Whereas Inception also, it's a little bit more, it's very exciting. And it's very much a pop song, but it's darker and it's a little bit more emotion driven. And Koreans love their emotionally driven pop songs. I would say, consider some of the biggest K-pop songs in history. Sure, there are a bunch of hype songs, but Koreans really love stuff like Big Bang's Haru Haru, Big Bang's Lies, BTS's I Need You. Like, I feel like emotionally driven pop songs and that are both exciting but also kind of darker, and a little bit more melodic. Like I think the chorus in Thanks is incredibly catchy, Na 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 na. It's very catchy, but I think it definitely caters a little bit more to people who are a little bit more Western is the best word. But I feel like the chorus for Inception, which goes, "I'm in love." I feel like that melodical nature is way more. It's way more marketable towards Koreans. So in that sense, I think Thanks is definitely a title track worthy song. But I think ultimately at the end of the day, ATEEZ, as big as they are internationally, they are bigger international than they are domestically, and I still think it is as important as it is to dominate the international market. I think it is just as important to dominate your home market first. So, I actually like the fact that they pursued Inception as their title track because I think to date, I think ATEEZ has had the most non-Korean marketable title tracks to date. If you look at their debut song and Say My Name, I think Say My Name is one of the greatest Korean K-pop title tracks of all time, but I think it is so jarring for the Korean general audience. Wonderland, I feel like so much of ATEEZ's stuff it's so not Korean. I wouldn't necessarily say it's Western either. ATEEZ is their own genre, and they have like this sort of they had this swashbuckling pirate, like foreign out on the seas kind of vibe, and that can feel very jarring and different for the K-pop audience. So I think it was the best choice for ATEEZ after all of these title tracks. People saying that Thanks is better than Inception. Personally, I'm going to give my judgment right now. I like Inception a lot more than Thanks. I definitely speak and look at stuff from a K-pop general audience. For me, as a Korean American, I am not one of those Korean Americans that is super more Americanized than I am Korean. I am definitely way more American than I am Korean, but I think compared to most Korean Americans, I am way, way more Korean. I grew up on Korean culture. I grew up on Korean hierarchy. I consumed more Korean media and more Korean content than I consumed American content growing up. And, for me and my family, we only ever spoke Korean. I lived in Asia for a handful of times, and I understand the culture a little bit better. And I have always listened to K-pop music not as K-pop music. I've listened to it more as just music. So for me, I do definitely see it from a little bit more of a general audience perspective. So I prefer Inception over Thanks, but I do understand the Western appeal of Thanks. I really do. I understand why people would like it. And people saying that Thanks sounds more like an ATEEZ title track, I absolutely agree. Thanks, while not necessarily completely giving into their pirate swashbuckling theme vibe. It seems very much a continuation of it. If you took out the pirate concept from it, it still very much seems like it's along the lines of like their "Say My Name" type of title track. But that's the thing, people were saying like, "Oh, this sounds more like an ATEEZ title track," but how long are you going to do the same thing forever? You need to change it up. I think having Thanks as a B-side title track or a B-side in general is a good idea to show people that you haven't completely moved away from your style. But I think people need to understand that title tracks are just, it's a marketing game, And if you do the same thing over and over and over and over again, eventually it's just, and you are not popular domestically, it's not going to work. You need to switch it up. Now, if you are popular domestically and you don't switch it up, that's fine. That's completely fine. Don't fix what ain't broke. But, ATEEZ, like I said, as big as they are, they still need to work on their Korean market. So, yeah, from that aspect, I really like Inception and Thanks. I definitely like it way more evenly than I did Wave and Illusion. Because for Wave and Illusion, I liked Illusion way more than Wave. But for Thanks and Inception, I do like Inception a lot more than Thanks, but the difference is not as jarring. I will say though, one thing I find interesting is the music video for Thanks is way better than Inception, in the sense that the production quality is higher. I feel like they put a lot more effort into this. It's a lot more creative. It's a lot more fun. It's bigger in scale. Inception, it's a great music video, and I don't think it's low budget at all. But I did see some comments of people saying I was kind of disappointed in the Inception music video. It feels like it seems like it's a smaller budget than their previous title track music videos. And do you know why? I'm 1000% positive that, just like in the case of Wave and Illusion, ATEEZ expected Thanks to win. ATEEZ, it was clear with the voting system with Wave and Illusion. They clearly filmed the music videos ahead of time. They clearly favored Illusion over Wave. And that's why they thought Illusion was going to win. And that's why they gave it a much more high budget, expensive music video. And somehow Wave won. And that's why the Wave video was much more simpler in concept. And then Illusion was this huge, crazy video. There isn't, as again, a big jarring scale this time. Inception is much more high quality of a music video than Wave actually was. And I think Inception and Thanks are kind of on similar scale, but I think Thanks is just bigger and grander, and they just put a lot more money and a lot more time into it. Inception is, like I said, it's still a great video, but I do understand people's comments when they said that, oh, it feels lower budget than their previous title tracks. And that's because Inception absolutely was. Inception, as high budget of a video as it is, you're right, was not as big in scale as Say My Name. And now it's clear as to why that was. Thanks was clearly what they focused on and what they thought was going to win. And it's interesting how they've done this voting system twice in a row now, and it has never gone the way that they thought it was going to go. And that's really interesting. I think the music video is really cool. And the third thing I want to touch upon is perhaps the cultural appropriation aspect. And so this is something I don't really touch upon as much, mainly because when there is cultural appropriation in K-pop, they're not appropriating my culture, which is Korean and American. They usually appropriate off of Black culture, Latinx culture, sometimes Middle Eastern, Indian, Southeast Asian, stuff like that. So, I'm not familiar with any of that. So it'd be weird to comment on that when I myself am not even familiar with it, right? But I did read an article recently about Hongjung's braids, Hongjung wearing blue braids. And what I found interesting is that ATEEZ immediately, KQ Entertainment put out a statement regarding this issue, and ATEEZ put out a statement as well, and they say that they've learned their lesson, that they absolutely hear everyone. They didn't expect that. They didn't hear. But now, like, they understand, and so they're going to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And something I want to comment on, people say, like, how can Koreans not know? How can Koreans not know? It's like, first of all, there's a difference between regular Koreans and Korean idols. Korean idols live incredibly sheltered lives. By incredibly sheltered, I mean Korean idols basically all they focus on is their work, their life, and their immediate surroundings. They don't necessarily have the leisure that we do to be immersed in all sorts of different things. And I say this as experience of knowing certain idols personally and seeing their daily lives and routines. Some idols, I don't know if ATEEZ does or not, but I know some idols don't even have phones, and they don't get the news like we do. I know, and you also have to consider Korea did not report on some of the racial happenings, and they still don't report on all the racial happenings that happen in the U.S. First of all, it's there is crime and injustice and prejudice all across the world, and that's not reported all the time. So like imagine they are focusing on, probably their media outlets focus on their news, and occasionally if something gets really really big in the foreign news, then they report on it. Same with, I'm sure if there are injustices in Korea, the American news doesn't report on it. So their news outlet and world scope is limited. But obviously, that's not an excuse. There's then the question of the staff should know better. But again, the staff is the same thing. Really, it's just, some people just grow up ignorant. Korea is an incredibly homogenous country, and everyone is still wildly ignorant. And I feel like the more woke Koreans are your regular citizens. Regular citizens are more woke because it affects their daily lives a lot more. You have to ultimately understand that celebrities live a pretty privileged life. They live a pretty privileged life, and they live a pretty sheltered life, and they focus on very little things. So I'm definitely not excusing it, but what what I wanted to talk about was that ATEEZ is taking accountability. Instead of ignoring it, instead of doing it repeatedly, ATEEZ is taking accountability. They went out and they responded to it immediately, and apologized and say they're not going to do it again, and look into it a lot more. Now, ultimately, at the end of the day, it's hard to enforce this because culturally they don't understand. They really don't understand the racial injustice that Black people have gone through, and they will never understand, I think, in the same way that some people will never understand what Koreans went through under the Japanese imperial rule. But with that said, I think it would really benefit companies to consult with or at least have someone on their staff that's an American, or a Korean, a kyopo, like a Korean American, to basically just be like, yo, is this okay? Is this like culturally insensitive? Like stuff like that. Like in general, I feel like one thing that Korea, does really well, for better or for worse, is steal from other cultures. And that's the biggest thing. Korean ramen, they took it from Japanese ramen, and they took it and then made it their own and improved upon it. Koreans, I don't know if it's still the case, but for the longest time, Koreans were the number one b-boys in the world. They won every single b-boy global competition, but breakdancing started here in the Western Hemisphere, think about rapping in general. Rapping wasn't invented by Koreans. Rapping was born out of here in the U.S. From black culture, and Koreans. Koreans were the first ones to take it, and rapping was already mainstream by the time Koreans did get into it. But Koreans took it and then made it their own, and then changed it. Right. That's sort of Korea's style, and wokeness has been really, really late in catching up in Korea. Like wokeness has been PC culture has been a very recent thing in Korea, and it hasn't been until very recently that idols have started taking accountability, or companies have even started noticing. And I would credit honestly the Black Lives Matter movement for that. The Black Lives Matter movement growing bigger, becoming national and then global at this point is probably what tipped the scales and is what's causing companies to become a lot more woke in the process. But ultimately, Korea, I think, has been just so okay with biting stuff from other cultures that for the longest time they don't see a problem with that. They don't see a problem with culturally appropriating, because Korea as a country was so fractured after the war that kind of taking and stealing from other cultures was kind of their thing. One of the most famous Korean dishes, like this is such an interesting story that I heard, is 부대찌개, which is army stew, and it's a Korean dish where it's a hot pot of a dish filled with. So you put ramen, Korean rice cakes, and then you have to be very specific. You put sausages, which sausages are not native to Korea, spam or ham, and then you put beans, like canned beans, which again also not native to Korea. I might be forgetting a couple things, but all of those ingredients, they're very Western ingredients, and that's because after the war, Koreans, your regular Korean citizens, were so defractured and poor and broken that they would sneak onto U.S. Army bases, because the U.S. Army during the Korean War came and intervened and sided with South Korea. So the U.S. Army had a huge presence in Korea. Koreans would break into either U.S. Army bases, or Koreans would try to barter those delicacies from Americans. So Americans introduced sausages and spam and baked beans into Korean culture. And so Koreans would take that. They would take whatever they can and they would just pour it into their ramen, pour it into a soup, and then just make one giant soup and then serve it to people. And that's why it's called army stew. It's called army stew because they got those ingredients from the U.S. Army. Like, so much of different parts of Korean culture are not native to Korea. Koreans are one of the biggest countries obsessed with ramen. Ramen is not native to Korea. It's a Japanese delicacy. Jjajangmyeon is based on a Chinese dish, jjajangmyeon. Like, it's crazy. Like, I don't know how else to explain that. Korea is kind of appropriation. And I'm not saying that's okay or that it's cool, but I'm just saying I think the reason why the Korean culture has been like this for so long is because they've had to do that to survive, and Korean culture is honestly made up of appropriation, and they're just now realizing that it's not okay. I don't know where I'm going with this. Like I said, I don't really speak on this a lot, because if I did, I would be having, this is a 29-minute video, and probably 15 minutes of it has been speaking about the cultural appropriation. And I know that most people come here for music video analysis, but it is called the culture study because I know that most of you only come for the reaction, and probably half of you who watch this video aren't even going to get to this section where I talk about all of this. But I do this not just to provide a reaction, but the reaction is for me is more so the marketing to get you guys in, but then to for my main point is to try and sometimes provide a cultural insight or a cultural aspect that you might not understand so that we as a society can kind of connect and understand each other's viewpoints, you know? And the moment we start to understand each other is when we can move forward and better ourselves as a society. And that's what I wanted to really, really, ATEEZ, definitely made a misstep by doing this. And it's not just Hongjun's braids. I think it's different parts of the music video. Like, I don't know what this is in the background, and I'm sure the people who set dress this don't know either. But like, I feel like where like, there were like these throws, these rugs and stuff like that. These are not native to Korea, and the way they're dressed. With the headbands and stuff like that, it feels very familiar. Like I've seen it somewhere before, but I'm just not specific as to who. Like even this giant skull right here. I'm almost curious as to if this was inspired by the Mexican skull, the Day of the Dead skull, the sugar skulls. Even though it's camouflage, and one could say, they have a pirate concept going on. Maybe it's just a skull for the pirates. Sure, but stylistically, the way the nose is actually designed and the eyes is designed and the lips and the mouth are designed, it's very reminiscent of the Mexican Day of the Dead stuff. And look at even like the flowers right here. Like I feel like the flowers right there are reminiscent of how that's usually decorated. And one could say like that it's this set itself has elements that are a little bit appropriative, so I'm not quite sure where that lands on all of that. But ATEEZ is apparently taking accountability, and I hope that we don't have to have this conversation again, at least regarding with ATEEZ, because if you messed up, if you're angry and you don't want to stand ATEEZ or support them anymore, that's fine. But for me personally, I think it's just this is a good opportunity to have this healthy discussion, and then just talk about it's a little bit disrespectful to bite from another culture just for your fashion aesthetic. And then just move forward, and just know that, hey, this felt a little bit, icky because it feels so commercial, but that's just my personal opinion. I know I don't often voice my personal opinions on stuff like this, at least in my videos. I do on like live streams and stuff like that. But if you guys take anything away from this, I guess I want you to take away that I really appreciate ATEEZ taking accountability, and I do hope that it's a learning moment for them. So to summarize, because this video is getting really long, ATEEZ, the song itself, Thanks, I like it a lot. It's very fun. It's very exciting, but I prefer Inception a lot more. I think the music video it's epic. It's huge in scale, but at the same time, they vested a lot more money into the music video and even the song production itself. If you compare the song structure to this and to Inception, one of my things that I noticed after is like Mingi and Hongjun barely rap in that song, and their rapping is like a little bit muted. And Mingi, he's kind of relayed to just like this auto to the da, 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 da. But like here, they get like full fat verses, and like they get really really nice big rap sections. And again, that's more in line with their usual title track style. So yeah, even on that aspect, it was very clear that ATEEZ probably wanted to promote Thanks. But yeah, that's it for my reaction and review of ATEEZ's Thanks. you know, if shit got a little too dark or a little too deep, I'm not sorry. You know, sometimes this is a necessary conversation to have. I don't speak on it too much on this channel, anyways, because, like I said, I think there are better people. I think you can look to YouTubers like Briss Life or Desi March, who could probably give you a better understanding of the Black experience, and speak on the cultural appropriation aspect, because it's their cultures that are being appropriated. But you know, I just wanted to put in my 2 cents about this whole thing, because, you know, I think when a group does take accountability, it should be appreciated and applauded, because I think it encourages other companies and other groups to also look at this moment and go, "Oh, this is a good thing. You know, this is a good thing, and we should make sure to not do this in the future as well." Anyways, that's my reaction and review. Let me know, what do you guys think of Thanks by ATEEZ? Just let me know in the comments down below. Thank you very much for supporting us as always, guys. If you enjoy our videos, check out our Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/formatherapy, for as little as $2 a month, you get early access to videos like this. We also have live stage variety, drama reactions for higher level tiers, and for just a little bit more, yet well, all those things. But if you don't want to support us monetarily, that's completely fine. You know, if you hit the like button or you leave a comment, that actually helps us out a lot. It helps us out tremendously with the YouTube search algorithm. Go ahead and hit subscribe. Be notified when we upload a new video by hitting that notification bell, and check out all our other videos over here, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.